Okay, so spec maps. This is just a quick guide for people to get their head around how specular maps work in iRacing liveries. I do a lot of liveries that have really complicated specularity. You can see how this has like a metal chrome, and then there's this sort of painterly texture here that has a semi-gloss. It's not fully glossy. Um, and it takes a lot of sort of management of the specular map alongside your normal diffuse albedo color. That's what they call the base color in computer graphics. They call albedo. Um, and I'll show you just as an explanation for people who don't have a background in computer graphics, just how metalness and albedo and all this reflectivity and glossiness work. The traditional sort of game engine, this is iRacing is very typical in the way that game engines work right now with the metalness and roughness maps mapped to a color channel, and I'll explain that in a second. But I just want to show first what like roughness looks like in action. So when you drop the roughness, you can see this environment gets reflected more, and what happens is you increase the roughness is it creates a sort of like an effect on the material that it diffuses the reflectivity. That doesn't reduce the reflectivity. What it does is it makes it, ironically, we call it glossier, but it's actually the inverse. It's rougher, but so it sort of scatters the reflectivity, and you can see it creates this sort of softer edge. When you have lower roughness, that translates to this harder edge reflectivity of the environment, right? Okay, and then metalness, what that does is increases as it goes up. You'll see it becomes like chrome. Chrome has a very low roughness and a high metalness, and when you have a color mixed in there, it gets kind of multiplied by so this being your albedo color will get multiplied by this kind of metalness. And watch what happens when there's a low roughness and a zero metalness. It looks more like plastic. Okay, so how do you get this in iRacing livery? Well, it's pretty easy. The way that they do that now is, and I'll show you um, my playground for specularity to show you. So here's a scratch pad that I use. So the color, like they explain to you that the way that the color is mapped, the values for metalness and roughness are mapped to individual color channels. So if you look at the red channel, this is what is this? This is the glossiness, I believe. No, that is the metalness. So the red channel I'm in Photoshop here. Sorry if it's unclear. I'll go to the channels. I'm in the red channel right now of my RGB image, okay? And this is going to get mapped to the metalness value, okay? So when we are in here, this is this value, right? Well, without black doesn't help very much, so let's make this white. So if you made this fully white in the image, you're going to get this. You're going to get a solid color, solid metalness. The green channel in your image is mapped to your roughness. Okay, so as you increase, as you get this bluer, this pure blue kind of light cyan color, because it has, if you look at the color palette up at the top right here, it's 255, 255 in the green and blue, and 0 red. That means it's fully uh, well, the green channel is the only one you actually care about. It's fully rough, okay? So that's what that is. Um, this looking like this is, you can see it's 0 in the green. It's fully smooth. So what does this what does this look like if I actually take this image and I map it in uh, iRacing? Well, let's make this, and I'll go to my PC. And it's kind of unclear because here I'll make come on. I'll make this the base color. Okay. So there you have it. Like, as you can see, you know, our experiment in that Marmoset program where we saw the 3D, now we're just getting these values mapped in an image. So you can see that these areas here, these chrome areas, that's that pinkish color that has in the red channel, it just has 100%. And so what you can do is you can start, you know, you can get intermediate values, right? You can get like 50%. Why is this? I've got my brush on normal. Oh, I'm on a layer, that's why. Let me flatten it. Okay, just jumping back in. This, you can have these mixed gray values, right? You can have a spectrum of from 100% glossy, like metal, to no metal, to, you know, in between. And what you'll get is, let me just save a copy again here. So you can see, and what happens is it kind of darkens, right? You can see it darkens the color. So when, as we showed in our Marmoset, you can, if we made this red, our base albedo color, it would get, you know, multiplied by that. So you can see this metallic effect over the red, and that's sort of the semi-metallic area. So that's sort of the basics of how you go about it. And one of the ways that I like to control the specularity, like, it's a bit boring if you just have one big flat value for the car. It's, you know, you can do that, but I tend to make these more interesting colors. Like, on, I use, because I have a background in, you know, computer graphics, but also print. I like to use the glossiness in a realistic way. So you can, and adding just a bit of variety adds some interesting realism. Like here, this is a sort of magazine, you know, like a kitschy old 80s magazine kind of feel to it. And what ends up, what you have is actually these darker areas, because it's like a real magazine. The darker areas are higher gloss, they reflect more light, and the white areas have a lower gloss. None of this is metallic, except maybe there's like a couple of little spots and, yeah, that I added for here, like just for kind of interesting effect. So how do you go about doing something like that? Well, that is a little more complicated, but not very. What you can do is, you know, in your color channels here, when you have your albedo base image, you can, you know, these channels can serve as sort of a mask for your effect if you want. You can use those, or you can go about just selecting, if you control click or command click on the Mac, the RGB channel, what it does is it creates a light luminance sort of selection. It basically makes a black and white image from your selection, with the whitest areas being the most selected, and black being unselected. So what you can do is, if with that selection, you can make a layer. Best to just make a layer mask, reveal selection. Okay. So, and then what you can do there is you can say, let's say, fill it with our, and you know what, like, a lot of people will probably say, oh, get the value, you know, 0, 100, you know, like all here, like, oh, and it takes a lot of remembering to sort of say, oh, which channel, this is green is glossiness, or no, wait. What I do is I just use my scratch pad. I know which colors are which, so I just kind of grab it from there. I say, oh, okay, and I know that that's 100% glossiness. So I'll say, okay, well, let's fill that layer with 100% glossiness. Underneath it, we'll fill it with matte. okay? And what we've got like right away is something interesting, right? You've got, why is this always so difficult? Let's find my, okay, no, let's save a copy. Don't want my alpha channel. Okay, so when we go back, there. And again, the red is a bit hard to sort of see, but you can see right away that there's this really interesting sort of thing going on. You can almost feels like velvety. And then when you put your base color in, and you can see like the white areas are, let's look at our image again. Our white areas here become the high gloss areas. And then if you want the reverse, if you want, you know, that's not what I want. I want to inverse the mask. Oh, I'm in my quick mask. That's why it's not working. So if I invert it, the mask on the high gloss layer, right? I'm going to get the opposite effect. Okay. And then what you can do is start mixing and matching. Like there's no, you don't have to work all on this. What you can do is just fade it this way. You know, you don't have to start remembering values and opening up the color selector. You can just start mixing and matching at this point. And then the same goes for the chrome. Like I just grab the chrome color, right? And you can see it in the color palette lit up there. And you can start painting that on, you know. And if you wanted to say select color range and you only wanted the white, because that's generally when you want chrome, you want that's chrome is 100% white, and then we just select color range. Okay, so let's hide that for now. Select color range, get a white point. Okay. Okay, so let's fill that with chrome. Okay. Okay, stepping ahead here, and then you have to, you know, reshow those layers once you've got. So these are all associated with your spec. Now we've got this mix of glossiness, the high glossiness, the chrome, which is this pink area, and the matte. So let's see what this looks like. What it's doing here is it's rebuilding the .mip file as you preview it. Yeah, so it's interesting, but I wonder if there's something else going on here. Those black areas are sort of suspicious. Let's see what happens when we have a white base color. Actually, let's see if, let's just output this as our image since we are working on this. The albedo color. It's a little bit hard to see what's going on with the red when it's intended for this image. Okay, so there you go. So yeah, no, that's working as expected. What happens is because, like, as we saw in the marmoset example, when you have a color, right, it gets multiplied. Metalness sort of creates this multiplied effect, and you get the environment, and so it can become black. And so that's why if you want to make metal, sort of metalish textures, what you end up having to do is often kind of lighten this so that you don't get that really hard darkness. Yeah. So that's looking kind of cool, right? Like all these spots in between that were white because we selected by color range and and then we use that as a mask for our pink chrome layer. You're getting these chrome effects if you see in the white area. I mean, I wouldn't do this. I wanted a realism for this, so I ended up going just the white is sort of a matte semi-gloss sort of thing. But you can see this is how you build a complex texture or shader like this one here, where you have this mix of chrome. And it's an involved process to sort of jump back and forth. Like when you get a lot of layers going and stuff like this, um, that's what you can sort of use Photoshop actions for, is to sort of hide and show these layers, export a copy as a spec map, and then turn them off again as you work. I don't tend to work this way in Photoshop anymore. I'm working this new commercial program that's a compositor. It's definitely overkill for most people, but it lets me do all my tweaking and moving elements, and it keeps, I can do all this cloning and cleaning up seams and stuff like that. And I have what it does is, it'll output my you can see as I work on the base color, it does all this for me. So yeah, I can output it, and then both as it outputs both the albedo color and the spec map in these sort of different stages of how I work. So it's definitely overkill, like I said, but very flexible if you want that way to work. I did another tutorial on how to work with a compositor just to have this flexibility. So there you see it. You can see the little glossy effect in the black there. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it.